What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Modern Guilt. Sorry for the wait. If any of you were waiting and actually cared, I think it's been nearly 2 weeks since our last episode dropped, but we've been waylaid by holiday season fuckery and distraction. But now we are back. We're about to do two pods in 3 days because we have to get out our weekly podcast and then the bonus podcast that we're giving our Patreon subscribers. So shout out to those of you who have actually followed through with that and chosen to support Modern Guilt with some of your hard-earned or maybe not so hard-earned USDs. So that's nice. Actually, should we give a little shout out to the guy that maybe we shouldn't violate his privacy.
That should
yeah,
be
you're right.
anonymous.
Actually, yeah.
Privacy is safe. We won't tell your employer.
That's actually, yeah, maybe that is somewhat incriminating.
I mean, at some point, I'm sure it will be.
Yeah, it's a sure sign of depravity in your employee if they're listening to Modern Guilt. But that's okay. So this is episode 28. We're going to be discussing North Korea, and more specifically North Korean resistance and dissidents and the sort of like fugue online resistance network of people around the world who are trying to undermine North Korea from a distance. And then a few other little things.
I'm going to talk about men.
I'm going to talk about men, specifically feminine men, I believe. So shout out.
Feminine men and old white guys. So shout out to any of you.
Any white people listening.
Categories.
Thank you. But before we get into all of that shit, we just want to give another thanks and shout out to our guest that we had on for the last episode, Rod, because our episode, which has been like a GameStop deep dive, like on a financial tip, has been our most played episode so far, and Rod has done a sick job of like helping us share it around and stuff. We've gotten a lot of really positive feedback. So we just wanted to acknowledge and thank you guys for listening to that episode and say that we're going to pivot a little bit more to make sure that we include more like finance content. We're going to try and get on some other interesting like stock analysts or just sort of finance people in general. And we're going to try and see if we can maybe sprinkle a little bit of the same magic dust that we did for that episode to just, give the people what they need.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Should we?
Cool.
No, we can skip over GameStop updates, I suppose.
Yeah, no. I mean, you're either following it or you're not. And as much as I would like to make a GameStop podcast, I don't think it's
Yeah.
I don't think we're.
That's a good point.
The
actually.
demand's gonna be real fucking weird on that one.
Yeah.
Just the 1,700 bullish people on fucking Twitter and stock quits.
Yeah. Well, that would actually be like.
Yeah, we're already all chatting anyway, so we don't need our own podcast for GameStop.
Yeah, I was just gonna say though.
We just need.
Doing a GameStop podcast, if we did want to castrate ourselves and jump into that world, would probably be like so much more successful than what we already do. But
yeah,
it would also probably kill my soul. So I'm not trying to do that.
Yeah, I need sleep, man. I'm dying at the moment. Like having to wait till 3:30 in the morning for market to open is killing me slowly. I don't know how anyone can like trade big fat American stocks from this part of the world and not go absolutely fucking mental from sleep deprivation.
Yeah, just to clarify for the listeners, Damon is based in New Zealand and I'm in Australia, so for us to try and do any trading while the markets are open requires us to be awake in the little hours of the morning, which can be a bit crushing. But hey, we reap what we sow. We made our bed, now we lay in it.
Yeah, what else are you going to do anyway, right? Like, I'd rather be here waiting for market open than holidaying around New Zealand with all the other New Zealand festive types.
No, I agree.
No offense to any New Zealand festive type listeners, but
I agree with that.
It's fucking disgusting here over the New Year's period, so bail.
So Let's get into it. You want to talk about
Sweet, man.
feminine men first, or should I talk about North Korea?
Yeah, sure. So I was like I do all my, how I do all my good due diligence on what to talk about. I was browsing Twitter, and someone had shared this GQ article from 2018, talking about how sperm counts have been falling over the last 4 decades. And so I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Give it a read. And it's talking about how effectively men are becoming less male and slowly more female. So the article opens with this like fact that 50% our sperm counts are 50% less than what they were 4 decades ago. So, and male infertility is is like skyrocketing at the moment, basically. And it's largely, prior to people finding out what it was about, was coming out of nowhere, and it was just sort of like, well, what the hell? All of a sudden, it's a weird issue because it's a lot of people crying about how men are becoming less male, a bunch of fucking pansies. It's kind of like some weird boomer thing that we hear about, that you hear grumpy old men complaining about all the time. But as it turns out, men actually are losing a significant amount of their sperm and actually slowly exhibiting more signs of femininity based on this GQ article.
Is there apparently like an observed drop in testosterone levels across the board as well, or?
Yeah, it is. It's fucking wild, man. So I'll just summarize the GQ article. So basically, like, there's this decline in sperm rates that's accelerating, and this other measure of maleness, which is the distance between your asshole and your balls or something, is like becoming smaller and smaller.
That's so good.
I know, it's real bizarre, but apparently if you have like if like the gap between your testicles and where you shit is like long, then you're like more of a man.
That's so fascinating.
It's funny how science has deduced what makes a man, and
Yeah.
it's just like that one simple
That's
fact.
outstanding.
They call it the anogenital distance. Distance between the anus and the genitals has been shrinking, which is a sign that we're becoming more female.
We're eventually just going to start shitting out of our ball sacks.
Yeah, it was just going to be one testicle anus. So these shorter anogenital distances means that men are 7 times more likely, like the smaller it gets, if it's small enough, you're 7 times more likely to be subfertile or infertile and have a really small penis and a pair of crappy balls.
Wow.
So I know, right?
I didn't realize as well.
And this is like a widespread issue as well. It's not just some things here and there.
I didn't realize as well that like penis size was potentially linked to like testosterone levels.
They didn't tell you, hey? How fucked is that?
Yeah,
isn't that obnoxious?
That's really...
Science always tried to say that it didn't matter, but it does.
Fucking does.
Yeah.
How fascinating.
Yeah. So care about the size of your steeple. But so anyway, a lot of this, as it turns out, is occurring in the womb. And that's partially where this testicular dysgenesis syndrome is occurring, which is from, they say like there's some pretty classic symptoms that are, sorry, not symptoms, but things that are causing the widespread outbreak of more effeminate men, which is like smoking, obesity, and sort of like crappy diets and all that sort of stuff, and stress, so it's like generally like modern living is killing males.
Yeah, right.
All of this is so funny to me because it's just like, it sounds like the most alt-right fucking article that I can imagine being written. Yeah, but man, this is it. They actually have found that there's these compounds that make up like a large part of sort of how we package food that are called endocrine blockers, and these endocrine mimickers or some shit. And anyway, what they effectively do is that they bind to something in your body and it releases more estrogen. And so these chemicals that we're all ingesting like fairly frequently, my old man's a toxicologist, so I told him this story over Christmas because, he was sick of listening to me talk about GameStop.
Yeah.
And, Just like wanted to like politely change the subject to something else. So, what else you been doing? So I started telling him about this like story that I'd read. And he was saying like, oh yeah, that stuff's everywhere, you know, like in your cans of tuna that you eat, and the lighting on that has all these endocrine blockers. It's a really big issue. It's pretty widespread across every bit of packaging. And I was just like, fuck, you know. So all of this shit that we're eating and consuming on like a fucking daily basis is effectively leading to this like widespread issue of less maleness. And it's not only humans, it's like animals as well. So there's a TED talk that was done, you know, after I told my dad, my sister chimed in and showed me this TED talk on it's called like the shrinking alligator penis. And it's like fucking happening to animals as well, that their dicks are effectively starting to disappear because of these endocrine blockers or inhibitors or exacerbators or whatever the fuck they are so widespread and are pollutants that it's also killing maleness across like the animal species.
Jesus.
So they think it could potentially lead to some sort of fucking extinction type event. Like have you seen the movie Children of Men?
Yes, I have. I was thinking about that earlier. It's like a reverse scenario of Children of Men. That's
no. It is Children of Men.
Oh well, no,
right?
But I think in Children of Men,
was it woman?
Yeah, in Children of Men, it was women who had become infertile. But I mean, it's basically the same thing.
Okay. My bad. I haven't seen it in a while. But okay, yeah, well anyway, it's these I guess it is. It's like this complete backwards of Children of Men, and it's like legit happening to everyone. It made me really sketchy, because, you know, I had my like semen tested not too long ago. Like in the last couple of years or something, and I think it came out okay.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you know, I don't know, man. I want to fucking get it double checked off the back of this entire thing and
I don't
test
blame
levels
you.
And shit.
Yeah. It's so.
It's a weird personal fact on the pod.
Hey, the pod is just like a part of our bodies, dude. It's impossible to extricate ourselves from it. So don't even try.
Yeah. That's not something that I do for fun, if anybody is wondering. I was like looking at being a sperm donor at one point.
Hey, you can do that for fun, dude. It's okay.
Just so I have a little more ammo when I'm fucking shit posting online.
Yeah. Imagine like getting off on like having your sperm tested. So like you just cruise around the city to different sperm labs or whatever, and just like you find a place where the nurse is like attractive enough for you to want to masturbate over, and then you like get off on just like in the next room. You're like, there you go.
Well, with the advent of like good internet, they don't even have booths or like magazines for you anymore. So they just tell you to go home and like, you know, jerk off into a cup and then bring it back in. So yeah, modern times. But anyway, I figured, you know, that has like some really interesting implications, like across the board of, you know, it's such a fucking touchy subject that addressing it policy-wise would just be a nightmare. Like, you know, how are we going to raise test levels in men? You know?
Do you think that, and like you...
Fuck doing that nowadays.
Yeah, exactly. You mentioned something before, which I think is like sort of like problematic about trying to discuss this, but you basically said that the whole subject, this whole topic sounds like some sort of alt-right rant. And like, I agree that it does, but at the same time, I can't help but wonder if this might be, and I suppose as well, like you'd have to see to what extent there's like a scientific consensus on this. There might be strong evidence to oppose it as well. I'm not sure, but you'd have to wonder to what extent this impacts the sudden rise of wokeness and what you might describe as over empathetic sort of like social movements.
What did fucking Vice release? Like the wonderful new craze of Tender Boys.
What the fuck is a Tender Boy?
Oh fuck! I'm gonna try and find the article right now because it's just so worth it.
Yeah, I've heard of soft
Tender
boys.
Boy Vice. Yeah, I think it's like
the same thing.
Soft boys or tender queer. Yeah, tender queer and soft boys.
Yeah, good.
You know, which is just like highly androgynous. Yeah, I don't know, just fucking people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like the mind wanders there, I guess, as well, and makes you wonder about how much that might influence, the some communities.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm gonna paint a little picture here for you, man. Like,
Yep.
oh, sorry, I'm gonna maybe ask you a question and illustrate something to provoke a response. So, like, if you've been to, let's say, like an establishment like a bar or a cafe,
I have.
that
Yeah.
you could describe as like a liberal or progressive hub in your city, typically like a trendy sort of like modern hipster cocktail bar or like a specialty coffee cafe or something. You look around you and like it requires you to make an assumption, but you can safely assume that the majority of the people there probably have pretty progressive political ideas and would be sympathetic to sort of critical race theory and all that kind of shit. And you look around and you're like, you don't see any builders or concreters or cops there, do you? You don't see any people who are typically masculine. You don't see MMA fighters or bodybuilders or people who you could assume have high levels of testosterone, or at least we associate with having like high levels of testosterone or masculinity. Like you go to like an environmental rally, like the majority of the males there are people who don't appear on the surface to be extremely masculine. And I mean, like I'm probably included amongst them. I'm not out swinging my dick at rocks and smashing them, or assaulting people. But
assaulting, yeah, fair enough.
Not anymore, at least. And I mean, yeah, I wonder, dude. I feel, what's fucked up? I feel guilty pondering this out loud. Like asking the question just for the sake of prompting discussion is making me feel like I'm doing something wrong, which is so horrible.
Well, I mean, it really shouldn't be that contentious to suggest that the rise of infertility and lower test levels might have something to do with an increase of, awareness around the trans, like specifically male to female community. I mean, that is fascinating. That would be a really interesting study to be done. And I can't imagine that even being contentious. Why would it be? It's like, is there a chemical reason for this? Yes, no. I mean, if you're taking the idea that some people are born a different gender at birth, then this whole GQ article would suggest, yes, they are, and at an increasing rate. And it's a chemical thing from these from our plastics manufacturing. And no one's I'm not gonna weigh in on like whether that's good or bad. It's whatever. Yeah. But it's just a fucking fascinating response. I think what you're getting at is also interesting. Is there like a what's the crossover between test levels and political ideology?
Yeah, because I mean, I'm not a scientist or a biologist, so like I'd love for someone to correct me if I'm wrong. But I was under the impression that like higher levels of estrogen lead to sort of a greater prevalence of traditionally female traits, and one of those is like obviously empathy. Another one is like maternal instinct. So the sort of like inclination to care more about those around you and togetherness, and that's a great part of what is at the heart of a lot of progressive ideology at the moment. And I mean the what's the fucking word I'm looking for here? The correlation is not hard to spot there.
Yeah.
I still feel like it would upset a lot of people though.
Oh fuck, whatever. Everything does,
Yeah.
So, yeah, you're not gonna please all sides. It's like something that totally merits more research, though, because as far as I understand it, the consensus around it is pretty fucking deniable. There's some pretty outspoken people who are trying to raise awareness of it, but a lot of them kind of get shot down, I think, for being, right of center, to put it mildly.
That's
But
that's crazy, because this is, like you said, it's something that could potentially be an existential risk if fertility levels are falling.
it's associated with gnarly shit, man, as well. Like, sorry to interrupt you, but the article is like very specifically mentions that poor semen quality has higher mortality rates, diabetes, cancer, and cardiovascular levels, right? So
yeah, true.
that's generally not good stuff.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
But to think that perhaps there are people that are trying to raise the alarm bell and are being shot down for being, right of center, or for having potentially contentious views is so just appropriate for the sort of like academic climate that exists currently. It sounds like something out of the fucking textbook. When you
it sounds like something out of some weird novel.
Yeah, when you read about, like university cancel culture, like Jordan Peterson, for example.
Yeah.
By the way, did you hear about the staff at Penguin trying to make the company boycott publishing his upcoming book or something like that?
Yeah, I think some of them said that they're having like mental health issues over it or something.
It was like detrimental to their well-being. Fuck off.
That sucks for them, eh?
Yeah. Imagine being that fucking flimsy, dude.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Have you ever read a book that was bad for your mental well-being?
Not in the short term.
Yeah. I can't think of anything I've read that has like significantly damaged my mental health, or even mildly damaged my mental health.
No, I don't think I have either. I think
I've seen movies that have done that, though, right?
Yeah, I think I have. Yeah, Threads made me pretty depressed. Requiem for a Dream fucked me.
I saw Cannibal Holocaust a few weeks ago, which has left me pretty fucking not stoked.
Is that a movie?
Yeah, man, it's a movie about cannibals. It was this like fascinating 1980s, 1970s. Fuck, it might have been 1960s. Hold on, I'll bring that up. Hold on. It's a 1980s Italian movie where the director it was like really controversial because the director got put on a murder trial for it.
Yeah, right.
Because everyone thought that he had killed the actors involved with it.
Oh, I think maybe you briefly mentioned this to me. There's something like
we used some of
the violence was too real or something.
Yeah, it's pretty fucking gnarly. I watched it and I legit was like, I can totally see, and this is a movie from the 1980s, it's low budget, but I could totally fucking see where they were going. Where I was like, parts of it, I was like, yeah, I legit just feel like I'm kind of watching snuff,
That's great.
Murder films.
I'd like to see that.
Check it out. It's fucking horrendous though, man. Like, there's some pretty brutal scenes in it. There's one where they eat a sea tortoise. And like, there's a couple things where they actually kill animals as part of the film.
Oh, Jesus, that's rough.
Well, it's rough, man, and I had a weird reaction to it. And again, I'm sorry to derail from like maleness, but I don't know, maybe it's tangentially related. But there's these like parts of it where they kill and eat the animals, and they film the whole thing. And I was watching it and I was like, oh, that's so horrible. Oh, like, how brutish, and what an awful film. I should turn it off now. And then I kind of caught myself out and I was like, shut the fuck up. You eat meat all the time, you stupid asshole. Like, just because you don't want to watch the actual process happen and someone like kill, cook, and eat an animal, and the brutishness of it. It was actually, I thought it was like this extremely powerful, cinematic tool to show you the process that's involved. It'd be like if you like actually got to watch, the Uyghurs assemble an iPhone. I'm sure iPhone sales would drop pretty dramatically.
Yeah.
Because you're suddenly exposed to like the actual production process involved.
Imagine the reaction if like a video leaked actually showing that, and like how much Apple would fucking shit themselves.
stock price would fucking plummet, man. It'd be good. It'd be so fucking good if that
Yeah,
happened.
it would be
You know?
outstanding.
Yeah.
I speaking of meat, one thing I, as much as I hate Mark Zuckerberg, one thing that I heard about him that I think is kind of dope is that he went through a phase of like only eating meat that from animals that he killed with his own hands.
That's so fucking good.
Yeah, which I think is
Yeah, I heard
pretty
that as
sick.
well.
Like,
Yeah. I don't reckon he killed them though, man. I think he dissected them, eh?
yeah, and just like ate their fucking dicks and pussies.
Yeah. And just hung the whole fucking thing on a wall.
Yeah, yeah. Like for the listeners, I don't like broadcast this, but like I'm personally vegetarian, so like I prefer not to eat animals. Like sometimes I avoid dairy products as well. So I kind of appreciate when carnivores, or sorry, omnivores rather, take measures like that to sort of, I guess, like ethically challenge themselves a little bit. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I noticed a weird amount because after watching Cannibal Holocaust, I was kind of fucked, and I was like, oh god, it was one of those movies you see and you're just like, that's so brutal. Like I must know more about it. And there was a weird amount of vegan support for the film, off the basis of it just being so brutal about like how the animals are actually killed and eaten. And it was like, yeah, because it's fucking shocking, man. As well as humans being killed and eaten, but probably less of a contentious issue nowadays.
Yeah, there's not many pro-human eaters out there in the world. Do you think there are more or less cannibals alive now than there were 100 years ago?
I don't know, man. I kind of feel like there's probably a weird scene about it. I definitely have heard some rumors of that sort of thing going on in Christchurch.
Really?
Of people, yeah, in like the S&M scene, but not that I'm in the S&M scene. I've just like heard rumors of rumors of rumors. Yeah, just so everybody knows, this not my fucking coffee club.
So because we're in the business of peddling rumors now, it seems like it. What are these rumors like?
Oh, well, that people getting like, it's like a consensual thing where people have been like whipped and cut, and then someone like eats the flesh. But that's all hearsay, and there's no basis beyond sort of like drunken 12 beer deep fucking whispers.
Bullshit conversation.
Yeah, I wouldn't take it. But the thing I've always thought is that if the rumor's out there, there might be elements of truth behind it. So it's one of those things I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, there's the
fucking 100% believe that there's probably cannibals in New Zealand right now, without a doubt. They're not, Cannibal Holocaust style fucking chaining people to pikes and cutting their heads off and eating their flesh. They're probably just like S&M freaks that cut little bits of meat off and eat it, and they get off on it.
Yeah.
And everybody comes and has a good time.
Or maybe get like some like dehydrated flesh sent in the post from like the dark web or something.
Is that a market? That'd be fucking
interesting. I mean, I'd imagine there would be. Why wouldn't there be?
I don't know. What do you think that does for test levels? Eating human flesh.
That's a great question. It probably depends on the diet of the person you're eating.
Yeah, true.
If you could track down like a goat herder from like the Mongolian steppes, it would probably be great for your testosterone. But if you were eating some like waif from Brooklyn, then like it would just turn you into a woman immediately, probably.
That's one of the things that's horrifying about the again, sorry, trying to jump back.
No, I love this fucking topic, don't worry.
There's what they call inheritance. So if you are an effeminate male, you're more likely to pass down these like feminine traits to your son.
Yeah, right.
Or your daughter. Mm-hmm. Although if you pass it down to your daughter, it doesn't matter. So, like woman becoming more like estrogen-y doesn't have much an effect. There must be like a cap level or something. But, obviously it has like a much bigger impact on men. It's so horrifying to me, man, because it's like not something that you can really do. And it's made me really look at like what I'm eating, and just everything I looked at, I was like, well, this is fucking plastic, and that's plastic, and that's got shitloads of soy in it.
Mm.
And just like all of it, I'm like, fuck, there's like very little shit here that I can eat that isn't kind of covered in fucking plastic, which is, as far as I understand it, like the bulk of where this, these endocrine whatever's come from.
Yeah, we're at a pretty dark spot in terms of food supply and food security, man. Like every level of the supply chain and like ecosystem is just tarnished and poisoned, essentially. Like there are studies, and this is partly unrelated, but you know that like there are microplastics found in the guts of like every fish that we catch from the ocean or whatever.
Yeah.
Like basically every living thing now just has like plastic inside its body, which is fucking mental. Like I don't know what the long-term impacts of that are, but they can't be good. I would actually.
Less men.
Well, yeah. Do you think? I reckon. Here's this for a wild theory, dude. Do you think that like the the evolution of our species is converging towards just a single gender species that reproduces like a fucking seahorse or some shit, and like it impregnates itself?
Hot.
Like the fucking aliens that we have like no like features or genitals. We're just like this uniform mass.
What alien are you referring to? Like, are you talking about Alien the movie?
No,
like the
no.
Xenomorph? Or are you talking like the Greys?
The Greys,
like those
yeah.
Fucking... Oh, okay, the Greys. Alien the movie type alien, converging to that would be fucking badass. But I feel like that would take probably, I don't know,
A lot of testosterone.
Yeah. Yeah. Just to the point that you're so fucking tested out that your blood turns into acid. Yeah, it's interesting, right? So they're talking about the fact that men are going to have to start freezing their sperm and putting that into sperm banks, and that's going to be a potential way to offset it. There's also been a lot of talk that the coronavirus vaccine is potentially going to cause infertility.
Oh,
so
fucking great. That's just what we need.
Yeah, man. So they're encouraging men to go freeze their sperm.
Jesus Christ.
Because they're not sure exactly how it's going to affect it. It's one of those things you just think, like, fuck this.
Yeah,
like,
this
I'm
whole
not
fucking thing sucks dick, man.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I was just going to say, like, I've been pretty firmly in the camp of, like, yeah, I'll probably get the vaccine eventually after everyone else who needs it more than me gets it. Just because, you know, I want to do my bit to have a world that we can travel freely in and shit. But, like, the more time passes, the more things like this just randomly pop up in my field of vision or in my thought process. And I'm just like, well, yeah, like, fuck, I don't know. I don't want to take some shit that kills all my fucking sperm.
I would rather take the drugs that Trump has than take the fucking vaccine and get coronavirus. I would rather that be the option where it's just like, dude, just pump me full of that fucking Regeneron.
Yeah, give me that Regeneron. Like... Which, by the way, has fucking continued to just perform so poorly, like, in terms of its stock price. Which is so depressing.
Yeah, well, they aligned with the wrong guy, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's the problem.
Yeah.
Are we going to converge to, like, a single... Maybe. We're kind of converging to this weird, like... Like, I feel like there's a fucking South Park episode where... like people from the future come back. Have you seen it? And like they're sort of like this bald, fully mixed race. There's no race anymore, and every language is just amalgamated into this like guttural speak. And everybody just looks the same. Yeah, I can see it, man.
Oh,
I mean,
100%.
we're kind of getting there already, right? Like I'm like mix of all kinds of, like when someone's like, oh, what race are you from? It's like I could tell you like one or two places, but in reality I'm just like a fucking gangbang of different people that got together in a room, and now I'm like the byproduct of it.
Fuck yeah.
There was just like one person from each fucking continent, and it was just disgusting. And it happened on an island somewhere, you know. So yeah, why not?
Just a colonial fuckstorm.
Yeah, it's a colonial fuckstorm, and it's not getting better. Like, it's not a bad thing either, but you know, it's gonna keep happening. So, I think that's probably where we're heading. But until we can fuck our genes up with CRISPR, right? So
yeah, true.
You know,
yeah,
that'll probably change it. It'll be some weird mashup of like we'll probably enter just this horrid fucking caste society of people that have like had designer genomes to make them some weird like Sims character that their parents wanted, and then there's everybody that couldn't afford that, and they're just like this fucking mashup of every broken fucking gene.
They habitate the ground level. They live in like the undergrowth of the cities or whatever. So
yeah,
we're just like on a lot of tangents here, but while I'm remembering, I actually was planning to mention this to you outside of the pod, but there's this German company which is developing vertical farms in Singapore to grow greens, like, lettuce and spinach and stuff. And
yep.
I had a thought that, maybe the two of us should start keeping our eyes on some vertical farming companies as some stock plays.
Well, yeah, they're fucking fascinating. It's something that I've been really interested for a while, because I was thinking during lockdown, theoretically, what would it take to have like a universal basic income for everyone? Because it just seemed like as soon as you removed 90% of the workforce, nothing really happened. Like the veggies still came in and the meat still came in, and primary workers, as long as they were working, we were all good. The internet was on and the power was on and it was fantastic, and yeah, nothing happened. So with food and shelter taken care of, if you can have like a micro farm that's big enough in like a small house, it's almost like you've got kind of this base level of living that everyone can enjoy. So it's fascinating. The whole thing is fucking fascinating. I would love to look at it.
The reason that this news story sort of like emerged is because like Singapore has decided to start taking moves to try and ensure greater food security post lockdown as well, because obviously like Singapore is like an almost completely urbanized island state, and they're trying to figure out ways that they can basically produce more food locally. So like vertical farming is obviously a no-brainer solution, but it's and
it could be the new solar panels.
Well, yeah, I think you may be onto something there, dude. But anyway, that's probably a conversation for another day. And where this
is an end of your tangent special there. So
we're
just getting it all out, getting you ready for 2021. If you want to listen to that's what we're doing.
Maybe 2021, the theme for Modern Guilt can be like halting the dystopia. We like push up against it and figure out ways to turn it around. So every episode is like a really optimistic technology story. But I don't.
We're making money from the dystopia. This the fucking 2021, that's... buddy. We're hitting the roaring 20s. There's the dystopia, and then there's every way you can fucking profit off it. You can have your own little vertical farm that can raise your test levels or lower them depending what your end goal is.
Yeah. So I read an outstanding article by this journalist named Suki Kim in The New Yorker. And Suki Kim is sort of just like conveniently placed to write this article because she has a relationship dating back a really long time to this guy called Adrian Hong. Adrian Hong is a person of South Korean descent, born in Mexico. So he was born to South Koreans living in Mexico, who then went to the United States to study at university or college, and has since become a really sort of like prominent activist, or activist is probably even the wrong word, but actor in the fight against the North Korean government. So this journalist, Suki Kim, went to university with him in like the early 2000s, and this guy, Adrian Hong, since then has just been engaged in various sort of undertakings to try and progress or advance the fight against the regime. But like his sort of activities have recently like crescendoed in this pretty like interesting story. So we've talked like a little bit about North Korea on the podcast in the past, but mostly from just the standpoint of like curiosity and kind of asking questions around specific topics. Like we talked about the abduction of Kim Jong-un's nephew, which actually ties into this story, interestingly enough. So I started to get like curious about like, how much active resistance is there happening against the North Korean regime? Because obviously you hear all of like the sort of horror stories about North Korea, but you don't hear much about like North Korean citizens trying to push back against it or anything like that, which is just super rare because in most like authoritarian circumstances, like for example, you saw the Arab Spring, like eventually the pressure cooker just gets too intense and shit boils over. But North Korea has just maintained the same like simmer for so long, or not even that, not even a simmer. So anyway, that's how I kind of like got onto this story. Basically, this guy Adrian Hong, over time has developed like policy think tanks and has engaged with like politicians and diplomats and academics, and must just be like a really charismatic and smart dude because he's managed to just like sort of embed himself in like the kind of, for lack of a better term, like upper echelons of society. Like he's been to like dinner with like George Bush and his wife and shit, and is kind of just like widely regarded as, I don't know, just like a very like authoritative figure on
just a schmooze.
Yeah, on like approaching North Korea.
Yeah.
And he founded this organization called Free Joseon, and Joseon is like one of the traditional or historic names for North Korea, based on like this kingdom that existed in North Korea many moons ago. And Free Joseon is kind of, in a sense, like anonymous, as in the internet organization Anonymous. Bless you. And in the sense that they're decentralized, like a lot of their activity is online. There are like physical chapters in different cities across the world, but nobody knows all of the members. Nobody knows how many members there are, apart from Adrian Hong.
Yeah.
So like different estimates range from there being like 300 members to like 1,500 members across like 50 different countries. And basically what they've done, and they have a website that you can visit to read about in like really crude format, like what they're doing. They're trying to form a transition government. So like in the same sense that like the Taiwanese government still considers themselves the Chinese government, but they're just in exile. Free Joseon are trying to form like a North Korean government in exile, and they're trying to establish a plan for a transition of power eventually. And while they're doing that, in the meantime, they're also helping like high-ranking North Korean elites or citizens defect. So they apparently have connections inside North Korea, but obviously they can't name anybody or provide details about that to protect the safety of those people in North Korea. But they essentially help smuggle people out. They meet them on the Chinese side of the border and then help get them to either like Western countries where they can get asylum or back to South Korea. And there's this fucking really cool story. Like, you know how we were talking about this sort of world of, I don't know, like diplomacy and espionage when we were talking about Julian Assange?
Yeah.
And just like kind of like the backdoor meetings and things that occur.
Yeah.
So in 2018, I think 2018 or 19, I can link to an article that can fact check this. There was a raid on the North Korean embassy in Madrid. And the North Korean embassy is staffed by just like, I don't know, like 4 to 6 guys and their families. They just like live in Spain in like this shithole building. And
is it quite derelict?
Well, it's described as being on this like piece of land that has been like just undeveloped. So when you like drive around cities and you see like just like those open patches of like gravel and long grass where there's going to be like a huge construction project on it at some point. It's on like a piece of land like that. So it's just like, but the North Korean embassy is like in the middle of it. So it's just like open, like really like exposed and just not like very opulent or anything. So basically what happened is there were, this happened in the context of the last round of nuclear negotiations between North Korea and the United States. And There's speculation as to whether or not the CIA is involved in this or not. I mean, they probably are in some sense. But basically, these fucking members of Free Joseon, so either like South Koreans who are trying to liberate the North or North Koreans who have defected, fucking raided an embassy, dude. Like, the balls on them is outstanding. So, like...
That's fucking gnarly.
Yeah,
that's really intense.
So, like, dressed in all black with, like, balaclavas, they went in, like, armed with weapons like bats and then, like, fake assault rifles and shit. And Adrian Hong went in there under, like, a pseudonym and said that he was the head of, like, this investment firm that wanted to invest in North Korea. So he, like, went to the embassy to the front door and was like, hey, like, I want to come in, and basically just, like, pushed his way in. And then these guys just rushed in there and tied up all of the staff and their family and started... there are videos online that they took from inside the embassy as well, where they, like, pull down the portraits of the North Korean leadership and just start smashing them on the floor and stuff. And they start raiding like all of their computers and hard drives. So it's like a full-on like intelligence grab by this like completely like rogue group. You know, they're not like government sanctioned.
Did they find anything on the hard drives?
Well, it's yet to be determined. So one of the women who was the wife of one of the diplomats who was working in the embassy jumped from the top floor window and managed to like escape and get attention. So the fucking Spanish police responded and arrived at the embassy while these guys were still inside. They knocked on the door and Adrian Hong put on like a North Korea, like a DPRK badge, responded to the door like pretending to be North Korean and was just like, it's all good, no stress. And the police were just like, oh, okay, no worries, and just bounced.
Yeah.
And then this group...
This is a fucking movie, man.
I know, dude. It's fucking outstanding. And then these members of Free Joseon all jumped in. They, in like 4 different cars, drove to different airports, and then, fucking escaped. And because these negotiations were happening at the same time over the North Korean nuclear program, they went to the CIA because Adrian Hong has connections with people at the CIA, like a sort of ongoing relationship, allegedly. And they agreed to hand over the hard drives and thumbsticks and shit for like a period of 2 weeks so that the CIA could get access that could potentially help them in the negotiations. But then the CIA like betrayed them and kept the hard drives and issued like an extradition warrant for Adrian Hong. So he's wanted in Spain.
To North Korea?
No, to Spain. Because he...
Dude, fuck the CIA.
Yeah, because he trespassed the embassy. So his lawyer has been told by North Korean diplomats that, or defectors rather, that North Korean agents have an instruction to just like kill him on sight if he's found. Obviously in the United States, if he's found, he needs to be arrested and sent back to Spain, where he would be charged and most likely sent to prison. So now this guy is like in hiding in the US somewhere, but still running this like network of people. And this journalist, Suki Kim, managed to like meet up with him at this fucking restaurant in Times Square, like just in plain sight, like some Born Identity shit, and do this piece on him, like interview him. And he still texts her and they're in like regular contact. But so you might remember when we were talking about Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-un's nephew, the guy that escorted him or who met him at the airport in Taiwan, who was helping to arrange his asylum in the Netherlands, was this guy named Chris, in air quotes. I don't know if that's his real name, who actually went there on the instruction of Adrian Hong. So they were the group responsible for trying to rescue Kim Il-sung, who then were like intercepted and then obviously had to surrender him to the CIA, where he's now in protective custody.
Yep.
So it's really interesting if you go on the website for Free Joseon, they have published this video, which is sort of like, I guess, their like charter, which is all of their like demands of the North Korean government and all of their like principles that they're going to use moving forward to like when they hopefully assume power and fill the vacuum once the regime collapses. And apparently they are like coordinating other like resistance activities inside the borders. But yeah, I thought it was fucking really interesting to just hear about. Like, imagine just actively participating in taking down a state. Like, if you and I were just like in our day-to-day life, just casually undermining a government.
Yeah, no, it makes me feel very unsuccessful. That's fucking amazing. It's one of those things where it's so incredible to hear about the get up and go of other people sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you think like the amount of effort and dedication and work that takes when the average Joe complains about driving to a restaurant to pick up their own food is just fucking incredible, eh?
Fucking A.
You know? Like man, fuck that's... I can't even imagine the amount of planning it must take to like storm an embassy, you know, like
Well, what I find,
and that aside, like good on them.
What I find is really interesting as well is that like this would all take a lot of money. So like they're being backed financially by actors of some description. Whether that like people have speculated that they were like a CIA proxy and that the Madrid embassy raid was actually like a CIA operation. To get that information to assist in the nuclear negotiations. But like Free Joseon have denied that and then were later sort of backstabbed by the CIA, which still doesn't rule out that connection, but it might suggest that that's not the case.
It's all happening, eh? Man, when you hear that, like, real spy shit actually happens.
Yeah, dude. You know? Absolutely.
Other people's lives are really interesting.
Yeah, and although the likes of Free Joseon's actions at the moment don't seem to be improving the lives of people in North Korea, like I think it's really encouraging that people are trying to do something because, like, as is pretty well known, like South Korea barely has any motivation to reunify the peninsula anymore. Like the status quo is just too difficult to change. Obviously, like.
It's like Israel and Palestine.
Yeah, like obviously the presence of nuclear weapons on the peninsula as well makes it nearly impossible. And the majority of South Koreans now are so far detached in terms of like their familial connections that they don't fucking have any drive to support a reunification either. But it's still so important from a humanitarian perspective. And I'm really glad that there's some people somewhere are taking it into their own hands. Even though they may not be moving the needle very far. I just hope that, you know, this is the start of something smaller.
Who knows? One bad file on a hard drive could bring the whole thing crashing down, right? I mean, you think that if there's a significant threat involved to American interests and that's uncovered, like they're not going to fuck around, you know?
Well, I see where you're coming from, but there is also like the China factor.
Yeah, what the fuck is the relationship between the two? I don't understand what China is ultimately looking for or collaborating with North Korea on. Like, what do they have?
So, the short explanation is basically that North Korea acts as China's attack dog, essentially. It's just like a rabid, shitty mutt that they keep on a chain that just like fucking barks and yaps at people as they walk past, just to divert attention from China largely.
Yeah.
And it also acts as somewhat of a guarantor for China because they have like a sort of wild card. If North Korea was to just sort of like become a vacuum, then US strategic interests in the region improve drastically because North Korea is obviously the buffer between China and South Korea where US troops are positioned. And also it means that like the US and its allies in the region can't act as decisively as they might otherwise because North Korea is so unhinged that it probably would shoot a nuclear missile if its existence was threatened. So
that's so fucking terrifying.
Yeah,
that is literally threats.
Yeah, so like
you know, fuck that shit so hard. Oh, dude.
So that's the reason that
killing myself if that happens.
China like economically like props up the North Korean regime and provides most of their food and shit.
Yeah.
But there's also a more low key and less acknowledged relationship with Russia, man. Like a lot of Russian investment actually goes into North Korea. There's like a lot of economic ties. A lot of Russian expats live in North Korea.
What's the trade? What are they trading? That's what I don't understand. I thought they were a closed nation. You know, like what are their exports and everything?
I think, well, dude, I'm speculating, but I think possibly just like raw materials. North Korea also has like a degrading but still operational like manufacturing industry. So just like basic manufacturing. So it might be a flow of fucking I don't know. I'm probably not equipped to answer, but
well, who knows, right? And that's the fascinating thing.
Yeah,
is that there's one sort of like simple truth. It's not a truth as much as it is sort of like a largely what is something that's like largely true, but it's not true all the time. But it's just kind of like a heuristic to live by. Anyway,
Yeah,
I believe
don't know
in
the term,
mutual
sorry.
benefit, and I believe that everything is largely done for the gain of the participants, right? So
Yeah,
whatever's happening, it must be beneficial to both countries. Otherwise, it's
Yeah.
like you don't really engage in things just because you think it's a good idea. Like those Pakistani fucking gender studies military aid or whatever the fuck they're sending over there.
yeah.
Like, let's get real what that is. It's most likely
Cultural
gonna be used
imperialism.
yeah, man. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I would like to see that curriculum, Like, what's that going to fucking look
Yeah.
like? I bet it isn't your professor's gender studies. I bet it's going to be something more like destabilizing and used to ultimately serve the interests of American companies.
Oh,
Because
absolutely.
that's what they fucking do.
Yeah,
right?
100%.
And so, I don't know. Yeah. The ties there are fascinating because it's so like, what are they trading? Like,
Yeah.
what's the fucking economic tie? And disturbing as well. Like it feels nefarious.
Yeah.
But maybe that's just me being like suspicious and I don't want to say racist, but I'm sure someone else will. So.
I think when you consider the level of like state integration with a lot of Russia's largest companies, you could almost speculate that there is no real tangible trade and it's essentially just like a money funnel. Because North Korea, from like a geopolitical sense, also benefits Russia.
Yeah.
Because it just adds another element of chaos to the region and sort of provides somewhat of a smokescreen for Russia. And also there's like an underestimated close tie between Russia and China in terms of their relationship. So
and Syria, right?
Yeah. Russia, China, Syria, Iran are pretty closely tied, forming somewhat of an axis against what they see as, the threat of the West, which I think is very real if you're one of those countries.
Entirely credible.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another little, just while I'm on this North Korean spiel, I'm basically just unloading all of this interesting shit that I came across. Currently, there are only 2 Westerners in North Korea, and they're both UN workers. There were more Western expats inside of North Korea, mostly working for NGOs and for the UN and other countries' diplomats, but they were all evacuated when COVID struck. So can you imagine being one of 2 Westerners in North Korea right now? How fucking interesting would that be, dude?
That'd be fucking terrifying, man.
I know,
It'd be
dude.
so nerve-wracking.
Yeah. Like at any moment,
they must have a good
you could have your
relationship with the
fucking
people there,
door kicked in.
Oh yeah, yeah, that'd be scary.
Yeah.
I see. This is the other thing as well. Is like, North Korea gets bad press all the time, and I don't like to think that everything is. There's no shortage of media spin that we've been fucking exposed to. So I would like to know more about the real North Korea beyond sort of what we're told on the surface. I've seen some videos of people who go there. I had a friend that traveled there and did some, fucking I'm in North Korea travel vlog. Woo. But I don't really gain anything from those.
Yeah.
Like they don't really tell me much about what it's like. It would be really interesting to hear some. You're never gonna get it, but less biased bullshit around what they're actually up to.
Well,
and how bad truly are they? Are they, maybe they're just an incompetent regime that can't feed their people right, or are they truly this like 1984 style state that's enslaving its population?
I did come close to finding an interesting source. There's a vlog on YouTube called Echo of Truth, and it's published by this sort of like young, somewhat metropolitan-looking North Korean woman. She's kind of like pretty and speaks good English, speaks English well. I always fucking do that. I say speaks good English, not forgetting that's incorrect. Yeah.
Okay.
Good English is not a sentence that makes sense, apparently, according to...
fuck the elites. No, speaks good English.
Yeah.
Nah, we're going with it.
So, because she speaks such good English and she has access to the internet, you can make the assumption that she belongs to a sort of protected, wealthy elite class. But it's interesting because you have to ask the question whether she is publishing this material as like a coded version of the truth, or if it is state-sanctioned propaganda, because the videos are weirdly unsubstantial. Like one of the videos is titled something like "Woman I Meet in Pyongyang," and she walks around and just talks to women in Pyongyang who are just like at their fruit stall and are like, "Hi, my name is X and I'm selling fruit. The weather is nice." And then it just cuts to like another woman in Pyongyang and they're just talking. And
oh man, I can't wait to fucking watch this. I have it like all loaded up.
It's
already,
really great. Another example is like a post-COVID outbreak summary of the sort of like status of Pyongyang at the moment. And she's sort of saying like, now that the COVID outbreak is finished in North Korea, life is largely back to normal. If you walk around, except for the masks, everything is nice. And it's talk about, they show footage of the grocery store and she's like, the people now are able to go grocery shopping and find all of the products of which there is a great selection. So like that comes across as propaganda because it's like, well, yeah, look at the grocery stores in North Korea. They're so well stocked. But I also wonder if this individual just understands that if her material is going to be allowed to be published and disseminated, that it does need to fall in line with the sort of nature of propaganda, but it allows Westerners and other people to read between the lines.
Yeah.
Well,
also, if we removed North Korea from what you're telling me and inserted some other country, you'd be describing someone who's making a crappy YouTube channel that is fucking abundant across every single country. So if we take what she's saying at face value, then maybe life isn't so bad there. I don't know. Maybe it is. Who knows? I'm not saying one way or the other. There's a lot of evidence saying the other way. But also, if I was challenging my own entrenched ideas, then I would suspect that maybe things aren't so bad. And then the fucking common thing that you would come up against everything that she's telling you would be like, well, that's just propaganda. And that kind of seems like an easy out a lot of the time.
Yeah.
You know when like you get too deep on a fucking conspiracy theory and it's like all of a sudden every second post is Melvin Capital fucking conspirator to bring down the price of GameStop. And it's an easy way to challenge, like to kind of dismiss everything that you believe in. And for a more relevant example, every time something comes up, if you can dismiss it with your one line, like, well, that's just propaganda. Well, that's just propaganda, then I don't know if it makes as a convincing argument that things are not there. But maybe it is just propaganda.
Yeah, I think...
Does that my point make sense there?
It does. It totally makes sense. Okay. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Because like ultimately the interest of the West is to have everybody believe that North Korea is a propaganda machine that fabricates all positive news that comes from it, because it needs to be, diametrically opposed to Western interests for the Western narrative to be correct. But one of the reasons that I do think that North Korea is largely decimated is I went on Google Maps and I was scrolling around and just clicking on like the towns and cities that weren't Pyongyang, trying to find some of like the smaller towns that there were still user uploaded photos of, and some of these places are pretty rough, dude. Like you can see that because I think all of the user uploaded photos are mostly from people who have done the government sanctioned tours there. So you get shown around like the dedicated tourist sites or the parts of the town that are like aesthetically pleasing or where there are like monuments to the regime. But you see like the sort of like urban landscape in the background of some of these images, and the buildings are just fucking decrepit. Like the ground looks barren. I think it lines up pretty well with a country whose infrastructure has completely collapsed.
Yeah.
It's
Yep,
grim.
fair enough.
I also,
On that note,
yeah,
not to be overly combative.
that's okay.
And you know, I fully fucking believe what you're saying, but I also would be interested if people looked outside of Auckland, Wellington, Dunedin, Timaru, Hamilton in New Zealand, Tauranga, a couple other places, and you look at the bulk of small town New Zealand, you would think we live in the fucking like, and we're just some like third world nation, man. Like our small towns are horrendous. You drive from fucking here down to Dunedin, and for US listeners, that's like a significant portion of our South Island. And every other town is kind of like some crappy boarded up houses that look, you know, like they've been abandoned for multi-decades, and a dairy or a corner store for you Yanks. And, you know, it's just like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah,
it's like
yeah.
a shitty gas station.
No,
you know what I mean?
That makes sense. But what?
But also, yeah, dude, I totally believe it. I'm just
Yeah.
trying to fucking throw these thoughts around in my head.
What I'm describing, you know, when I say smaller towns and cities, still pretty large. So like the population of North Korea, I think, is around 23 million. If I'm going to actually fact check that right now.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because
Yeah.
I want to make sure I get that right.
It's also annoying how fucking shitty the media environment is that you end up having all these suspicions about every single, you know, popular narrative.
Yeah. So the population is 25.5 million.
Yeah.
So some of these cities that I'm describing are cities that are like, you know, have like high rises and huge apartment blocks and stuff that were once major cities in North Korea. And you can see that were obviously built on the back of a lot of money at like the height of the Cold War era. So by no means like these backwater unvisited towns or like small country sort of shitholes. I mean, so they're major cities inhabited by a lot of people that are just falling apart.
Yeah.
And yeah,
fascinating. Yeah.
I read another article, a journal article about like the common elements that contribute towards uprisings in authoritarian regimes, which compares different classes of society across different like regimes and how they've responded to like greater or lesser authoritarian control. And they describe like the state of the working class in North Korea across time, because typically the labor movement has been a really popular or important segment of social upheaval against authoritarian regimes. And even in the West, the labor movement has been historically very powerful. It describes the way that the regime sort of has managed or handled the labor class throughout history, and you get a picture of people who are just shuffled about because there's nothing else for them to do. So like I can't remember the specific examples of segments of industry now, but I'll link this article. It's like enough time passes since the Soviet Union collapses that industry X can't run anymore. So the 20,000 people employed in this industry now have to just go and work on a farm or like fucking chop wood or whatever. And they're just coerced into doing that. Like it's a completely like micromanaged labor force. And it's essentially like sort of, you know, labor camp style management of the population, which again is a pretty grim sign, I think.
It is, eh? And this is pretty fucking fascinating that happens, though. But in a weird way, I guess at least they're being redeployed, whereas we just kind of let our fucking labor force, we just like shuffle it under the rug and just ignore it and call them dull bludgers, and tell them to go learn to code, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just on a side note how fucking weird it is that the bulk of people are just some sort of like expendable input to a machine that outputs crap.
Yeah, totally.
And
Yeah.
you can just take it and then toss it aside and be like, oh, you know, you're not necessary anymore. You know, just go away.
Yeah.
Shut up. Go dig holes.
Yeah, 100%.
Speaking of men tossed aside, not men tossed aside, people tossed aside. There's this other article that I came across that I was keen to bring up. One of my friends sent it to me, and obviously I don't think read the actual article and thought that took it literally. So the literal title of the article is "China Incorporated will recycle used white guys." I was like he was like, "Can you believe it? You're gonna be eating white dudes." And I was like, "Oh yeah, that's what you get for hanging out on Discord." But so upon actually reading the article, which is like a Reuters article, it's actually what's happening is China has decided to take white men that were otherwise cast aside, specifically old white guys.
Wow.
And that's a very specific thing. It's not just anyone else. It's not like anyone, but old white dudes. And employ them in their own industries. So they're trying to make their ranks more ethnically representative, but mainly they're just after like experienced white guys who are older, who have like lots of industry knowledge.
Wow.
And they're making this big recruitment drive to try and capture some of that like knowledge that's been accrued over the generations, where especially where these people are being sort of like tossed aside in the labor force because they're A, old, and B, white. Isn't that fucking fascinating? So the article talks about how US companies are like tossing aside old white guys in favor for younger, more diverse you know, employment makeups.
Yeah.
And this is presenting like a big opportunity for anyone that's essentially, you know, wants to try and grab some of that knowledge.
Oh, dude, it's so amazing. Like
it's just one of those things. Yeah.
It's amazing, like the devastating efficiency of the Chinese machine. Hey.
Well, good on them.
I know it's so impressive. That's so smart. Like it's just It's like if you take the position of the West, it's like demoralizing how smart that is for China to be doing.
Yeah, well, I can't help but think
it's a jiu-jitsu move,
the
dude.
Fuck is behind all of these like big Twitter accounts posting about fucking, you know, diversity in the workplace and shit, when Goldman Sachs and the NASDAQ are coming out and saying that they don't want to invest in any companies that don't have like it's like at least one woman on the board, or you know, some sort of like measure of equal employment.
Yeah.
And then you see an article like this hit the fucking headlines, and you just think like, dude, this is just either old white guys are getting cast aside and China's seeing the opportunity, or and there's probably a bunch of different things that could be happening here. Or there's this like sneaky fucking push to push more diversity on the West, while they just like capture all of this like disenfranchised but incredibly knowledgeable fucking labor force to then pursue like Chinese domination. But get on them anyway.
I think both of those things are happening, dude.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Like
well, I mean, they're definitely taking advantage of the situation.
Yeah, 100%. It's outstanding the level of sophistication that I think like China is displaying in how they handle the West.
Well, they have a healthy respect for their elders as well. We don't. We fucking hate old people.
It's a good
West,
point.
You know?
Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
can
it's
you
ridiculous the way
blame
old
us,
people
though?
are treated here. I don't know, man. I have some good beers with some old.
No.
Dudes,
what I mean is just like our society is at the point that it's at now because of like boomer mentality.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, there's definite like benefits that they got that other people didn't. But I think a lot of that's kind of bullshit as well. You know, like it's just sort of youthful hoo ha and whatnot. There's like obvious benefits that the boomer generation got over other generations, but also that was the place that the world was at that time.
Yeah, I mean, it's completely
You know, would it have
circumstantial.
made a difference if it was millennials? Like, it's different. The economic differences are vast. You know, like we're not in a boom time anymore, and there isn't as many advantages that are being taken up. We're in a time of squeeze and greater scarcity.
Yeah.
So yeah, it sucks for us. I don't think that boomers are necessarily entirely complicit in taking advantage of what had happened during the period that they were alive. And also, the world is a very efficient place. If you can make money by going to university and come out and be significantly better off, more people are going to do that. And over time, that advantage erodes. It's just like the stock market, right? Like the moment that information becomes widely accessible, a stock sort of reaches its more, the correct price that it's meant to be at, theoretically.
Yeah, yeah.
But that definitely happens. So universities are less valuable now.
Yeah,
That's what happens. Everybody fucking went to uni because it worked at one point in time.
I
Doesn't work
think
anymore.
I think you're right about that. I think that like boomers were obviously just and their behavior was the result of circumstance and their environment, and like most people should obviously take what they are given and entitled, and but I think where the resentment comes from, which I think is actually justified, is the present day lack of a will to try and like redistribute wealth at all, and the clinging to power and money from that generation now, which I think is
True.
is pretty rough, because I understand, I understand and agree with all of the argument that you just made, but to be
Yep.
the beneficiary of those circumstances and then to later see the rest of the world struggling while you continue to benefit from the circumstances that you were lucky enough to be exposed to, I think is where the justified frustration comes from.
I agree with you. Although in New Zealand, we don't have a boomer parliament. We have a very young government here, and they are fucking lazy and not doing anything about the housing crisis. You know, they just don't care. So
Well,
they'll
you
come
and
out
I have
and
talked about this in the past, though, and I think we both wondered, though, if the market allows for much to be done in response to the housing
Oh,
crisis.
actually, yeah, true. So let me take that back. But it's more the hand wringing and everything that is, I think, kind of lame. That it's like, oh, we really want to do something, and we're gonna, you know, we feel really bad about it, but there's no actual action there. As opposed to just coming out and being like, well, there's nothing we can do, or we're gonna have to deregulate and try and, you know, increase the amount of housing, or we're going to make very specific requirements on who and who cannot buy a home, or, you know, do anything like that. So I also don't think that it's in New Zealand at the very least. It's like not entirely a boomer run government that's withholding the ladder from other people.
Yeah.
And also, man, the ladder that existed back then doesn't exist now. That's it's. I see. I definitely hear what you're saying. I also think that it's an institutional issue where there's still this narrative being shilled that you just go to uni, get a degree, and then you're going to be better off. Whereas that doesn't exist anymore. It's like it's fucking entirely eroded. You know. And nowadays, you have to be a little more savvy to like niche opportunity that will present itself, as opposed to just kind of blindly going and like doing what your parents did.
Yeah,
and,
flopping around in the
therefore
CBD of X major city.
yeah. And then it's like, here you go, young man, your ticket to success. Like that doesn't exist. So, and I don't fucking really know what if there is a universal solution. Like back in the day, it was kind of like, hey, we're all getting rich, going to university and becoming part of the knowledge economy, which was, you go work at a factory and work in some sort of, telling factory workers what to do or some shit. But we were actually making shit back then. We don't make shit anymore. So, now it's just like legions of accountants and lawyers fucking offering their services to one another.
That's so funny. Yeah. The
Yeah.
idea of legions of accountants is
So fucking good on China for grabbing them all up. There was a lot of arrogance from the technology sector to cast aside these workers because they were too old. Like Mark Zuckerberg famously stated in the early days of Facebook that he didn't want anybody working there who was like over 30 or over 35 or something like that.
Yeah, right. That is extremely arrogant. How could you dispel a lifetime of the accumulation of knowledge? That makes no sense. It's fucking
With
absurd.
one word.
Yeah.
Boomers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, on that note, let's wrap up.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Respect your elders and respect knowledge, but don't respect them too much.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You got to challenge them. They still are old fogies, but
yeah. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. This was episode 28. Like we mentioned at the front of this episode, if you want to subscribe to support us on Patreon for $5 per month, you can do that in exchange for some bonus material that we're going to put an equal amount of our heart and souls into. And what's even better is that if you are a subscriber and there's something specific that you think would be interesting for us to talk about on the podcast, or if basically you have any suggestion or request, feel free to make it. And then if we think that it will make for interesting content, then we'll basically tailor an episode to that idea, which as a listener, I would want to do. So yeah, exactly.
You don't have to.
100%. And feel free to contribute your own thoughts and stuff as well that we can drop into the pod to help provoke the dialogue or conversation. Anyway, please share us with your friends and family. Rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. Subscribe, like, follow, favorite, all that shit.
Or send abusive messages.
Yes.
Either one. They're all welcome. It's an emotional involvement that we're after.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, any sort of emotional investment and we'll be satisfied. So hit us up on Instagram, as per usual, at Modern Guilt Pod. Email us, modernguiltpod@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter, guilt_modern. And I think that's it.
Yep.
All right. Happy
Until
New
next
Year and take care.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
All right.
Yeah, Happy New Year.
Peace. Bye.
Peace.